you want to just start by maybe just a little bit of your overall military background, including the British. Just before you became a Canadian reservist, what was your military experience?
Okay. I joined the British Army in
Talk to me.
I joined the British Army in 1974, Junior Leaders Regiment, Royal Armoured Corps, which is we used to call it boy service, and it was for underage youth who couldn't join the regular army at the time, and it was like basically a sixth-form college, full of military education. We learnt 2 tank trades as I was armoured, and then leadership skills. And the whole idea of the junior leaders was to develop you as a future senior NCO, in order to cut your time down between promotions up to senior NCO. So it was very interesting. It was good. Learnt a lot, and it was a really good founding into the British Army. I left junior leaders in 1975, and then I went to my adult regiment, which was the 15th, 19th, the King's Royal Hussars, which is another armoured regiment. At that time, they were serving in Northern Ireland, and that was so it was quite a shock. That was my first deployment, first tour, and first posting as an adult. An interesting story there, if I can sidetrack, is at that time you had to be 18 to go to Northern Ireland, and so I got my posting order, and I noticed that my my travel day was the 15th of February, and I was only 17. But when the ferry docked in Belfast at 8:30 the next morning, I was actually 18-year-old. So they circumnavigated a little bit and got me into Northern Ireland. I actually arrived there on my 18th birthday. From there, I went back to from Northern Ireland. We were posted to Tidworth in Salisbury Plain area, equipped with a Fox armoured car. And from there I went on my first 6-month UN deployment to Cyprus. We're part of the Force Reserve on the Ferret Scout cars, and once I was there, of course, we interacted with all the nations in the UN. Again, the Brits used that as decompression from a Northern Ireland tour for the armoured units. We went from Ireland to Cyprus, and that was our decompression. It's very similar to what we do now, but we were still doing it as an operational tour. Again, very interesting, because we got to meet the Danes, the Canadians, the Swiss, the Finns, and all the other nations that were there. So again, a very interesting tour. From there, we went to Germany, Paderborn, near Sennelager. I think everybody knows, who's ever served has been to the Sennelager area. Again, we were a medium and close reconnaissance unit on Scorpions and Scimitars, again using 76, which when I came to Canada was very useful, because the reserve unit I came to was equipped with the Cougar, so it was a good transition there. In Germany, I did another two tours of Cyprus, and also did a 6-month deployment to New Zealand on exchange with the New Zealand Armoured Corps, which was again very interesting. Once the wall came down in '92, the British Army reduced from 20 armoured regiments down to 10 under options for change, and I decided to take retirement, or early retirement, from the British Army, and move to Canada. Once I got to Canada, I had no intention of going back in the military, but being new to the country, I needed a vehicle. I went to the local car dealership, bumped into another English gentleman who was actually serving as the motor transport officer with the South Alberta Light Horse. He suggested I should come down and speak to people, which I did. Don't know if that was foolish or not at the time, but I came back and talked to Robert Mackenzie, Colonel Robert Mackenzie, who is infamous in this area with the South Alberta Light Horse. And I actually found out that the South Alberta Light Horse was the sister regiment of my old British regiment, which I wasn't quite aware of whilst I was serving. So I joined I joined the South Albertas 6 months after I left the British Army on a waiver, because I wasn't a Canadian citizen at the time. They let me in, thankfully. After all my paperwork was done and dusted, I came in as a warrant officer, which is the equivalent rank of my British Army position. Went to Gagetown, did my QL7, came back from there, and then I was appointed 2 years later as the RSM of the South Albertas under, who was a colonel then. I cannot quite remember, sorry, it'll come to me. And did my time as RSM, and then I commissioned, and then became OC of A Squadron in Medicine Hat. I was asked by Colonel Tom Putt at the time, who was the CEO of the regiment, if I would be interested and willing to go to Afghanistan as part of his one of his G staff in the national headquarters. At this time I was employed by an American defence company called Cubic at CFB Suffield, training the British Army. So I spoke to my my supervisor there, and they were all over it. They thought it was a great idea that I could go to Afghanistan, learn some stuff in Afghanistan, bring it back and help maybe transition it to training the British Army, who were actually training to go to Afghanistan. So it was a win-win situation. So I did that. I did approximately 9 months work-up training with the NCE, and I was asked to go to Afghanistan early if possible, because we were transitioning from Kabul into Kandahar, and the staff was short-handed and they were really struggling. So I said yes. So I deployed, I believe it was the 3rd of January 2006 into Capt, and took up the role, my future role, which I would be doing for my deployment. By the time the main body of Task Force 106 arrived, I was actually beat. I'd never worked so hard or put so many hours in any deployment or any operational tour I'd ever done with the British Army. I was really actually I was ready to go home. It was that intense, but very, very interesting.
My recollection is that it seems like Colonel Putt was kind of picking and choosing people, right? Tell me a bit about that, because there's a number of Sallies and
Colonel Putt, obviously he wanted people he was comfortable with in his. He was actually deployed as the Force 2IC, second in command of Task Force 106, and OC of the commanding officer of the NCE. So what he wanted guys he was comfortable with, that he knew he had a bit of a rapport with, and to that end, his adjutant, the G1, myself, the G3, it wasn't a Sally, but it was KOCR, but he was very, very, keen to have him. Dick Cruikshank, he was very keen to have him on there because again they had a good rapport. So it was good. That worked well in the sense, even as South Albertas, we had somebody to talk to. We had somebody we could turn to in a time if you needed a bit of a quiet word or a bit of support. It was good, because that was key, because there was a lot of stuff going on that time. Also, as far as the regiment was concerned, it was the biggest ever deployment since World War II of people on one rotation. So it was again, it was something we're very proud of as a regiment, and I think even 41 Brigade, or maybe it's across Canada, we sent the most reservists on one tour, which is quite an achievement, I believe.
How many did you want to send on that rotation?
I'm guessing, I might get this wrong, but it was in the 40s. It was very high. It was right, and we were right across the board. That was guys deployed to Camp Mirage. That was to the battalion, to the PSYOPs, the UMINT, and all those type of different places. We had guys right across all. You name an area, I think we had somebody in there doing a role or a job.
So before you go, Afghanistan is fairly quiet. I mean, that changes obviously once you're there. Yes. But what did your family and, I mean, you told me what your Cubic bosses thought, but what did your family and friends think when you said, I'm going overseas again? They
thought I was nuts. I mean, at that time I was 46. I wasn't the young guy that fixed a bin and charged up Sandmore Hill anymore. Everybody thought I'd done my time, and I think I'd done my time too. But when somebody asks you to go do a job, and you've trained all your life to do certain jobs, and somebody asks you and has faith in you to go, I think it behooves you to go, and that's what I did. I talked to my wife, And it was quite funny because my wife turned around to me and she says, well, you know what 2006 is? And quite flippantly, which I'm up to do, I said, yeah, it's the year after 2005. And she says, no, do you really not know what 2006 is? I said, sorry, pet, I haven't got a clue. Well, as it was my 25th wedding anniversary, which obviously meant a lot more to the wife than it did to me. We're still married, by the way, when it's 35 years now. But again, luckily, my wife's a rock. She did 12 years in Europe with me with the British Army. Her dad was a former chief warrant officer in the Canadian Army, so she knew the Army life, she knew the expectations, and she gave me, if she hadn't have backed me and said I could go and did, I couldn't have gone. I certainly couldn't have gone without her blessing and her support. And obviously my co-workers, they thought it was great. You know, obviously they're all military, senior NCOs, warrant officers and chief warrant officers, British equivalent. They thought it was fantastic. And again, they thought it was something that would be beneficial to me as an individual and be as a company. So it was good. And civilian friends, they just think you're nuts. If you're going to volunteer to go to Afghanistan, you're just barking mad, as we would say in England. So I went, and no regrets.
The regiment's just coming off a bit of a high too, right? Because it was your centennial. Yes. So the centennial plus, sounds like Colonel Putt's exerting his force of personality here.
I wouldn't say that. He never forced anybody. It was the way I got it was, obviously my name's Tom too. It's Tom, I'm going to Afghanistan in this role. I'd like you to come and do this particular job. Are you up for it? And I basically said, if my family agrees with it and my work agrees with it, I'm in. But if either one of those two say no, obviously all bets are off. And I don't think I was coerced or whatever. I hope to think I was asked because he had faith in me, and he, as I said before, he wanted people who he was comfortable around and trusted. I believe that was the main one. There was some trust there between him and the other Sallies that he took with him.
If he hadn't made that personal approach, would you have volunteered?
Probably not. Probably not. As I said, I was 46-year-old. I thought all my fighting time, and you know, I've done 3 tours of Cyprus, which wasn't really hard, don't get me wrong, but it was 3 tours, 18 months. And did 3 tours in Northern Ireland, you know, which is enough. I thought it was a fair thing to do. But since he asked me, I don't think I was coerced, or certainly not forced into it. I think I'm bigger than that to, you know, to stand up for that. So.
Yeah, I'm sort of trying to say.
Yeah.
Because I've experienced his charm as well.
Yes, he's very charming. I can't. Yeah.
But so, what do you think it would be like? What was your expectation?
You know, to be honest with you, I did not have a clue. I'd never been to one of those type of countries. I'd missed Iraq in '92 because my regiment was a tank regiment on Chieftains, and they only sent the Challengers, so we didn't get to go. So I never did Iraq. I had no idea. Never been to Saudi Arabia or any of those type of places. I had no idea of the climate or the conditions. Or I went in, to be honest with you, totally blind. Knew it would be busy. I had a feeling it would be busy. A lot of long hours, but which proved to be so. But I had no idea, really no idea whatsoever what to expect.
What did you want from it? Like, what did you hope for you personally it would be like?
I think like everything in the military, you want to go there, you want to do a good job. You want to do, you don't want to let anybody down. You know, you don't want to let your family down. You don't want to fail. I mean, basically I just wanted to go there. And I knew at my age, I was going there, not, as I said, not to fix bayonets and charge up San Juan Hill, but I was confident in the fact, and I've told people this prior, if I could free another captain, a young captain from the battalion or from an armoured regiment or a reconnaissance regiment, free him up from an office job to go get some battlefield experience and some warfighting experience to enhance his, I was all over that. That was fine by me. That wasn't a problem, you know. If I could have gotten one of those jobs, that would have been even better. But I knew at my age that wasn't really on the cards. So you know, there's a job and there's an opportunity for everybody, and so the one I was given is the one I took, and I thoroughly enjoyed it.
What were your first impressions on hitting the ground?
Shocked. You know, even in Northern Ireland and Cyprus, the accommodations were very rudimentary and basic. But when they threw us in a weather haven, you know, 5 or 6 were in a weather haven, and it was early January. It was pretty cold. There was frost on the ground, you know, because we're right on the foothill of the mountains there in Kabul there, and there was just water running through the place, and you know, 400 yards to the washrooms and that type of thing. So it was quite the culture. I didn't know what to expect, but I didn't think it would be as rudimentary as it was. Having said that, it was still luxury compared to what the boys and the girls had when they went outside the wire. So again, you know, there wasn't too much complaining about it. It's a case of, well, this is what it is. This is what you have to do. You know, so we had hot running water, we had hot meals, more than some people had. So you know, you never complain too much because there's always somebody got it way worse than what you have.
How long were you in Kabul before you went down to Canada?
I never went to Kabul. We went straight to Capt.
Okay.
The task force prior, they just moved down, and they were still in the process of really setting up and getting things sorted from Kabul. So it was really early days in Capt. They were still building a lot of the buildings. Some weren't even completed. You know, they were still working on the NCE and the NSE building. It still wasn't completed. So it was, you know, it was early days.
Just so I'm clear, but you transited through Kabul to get to Capt?
No, I flew straight into Capt. So.
Okay, because you said Kabul when you talked about hitting the ground, the weather havens. I thought you said...
No, we were in weather havens in Kabul. In Capt. It was all weather havens in Capt.
Okay.
I never went to Kabul.
So what you talked a bit about it off camera. What was it like? Because your previous deployments, you've been an NCO.
Yes.
Now you're a captain. Tell me about that. What's it like, that sort of...
Well, very when you go from a chief warrant officer down to not down to a captain, that's slightly wrong. You know, when you commission, it's a different world. You know, it was you basically went from the penthouse, and you went down a few levels. As a chief warrant officer, you got a lot more respect, a lot more perks, you know, accommodation wise and whatever. But as a captain, you're just another captain, you know, and you got your single cell in the weather haven, and away you went, and no complaints about it. You just get on and then you soldier on, you know. We were somewhere to rack up at the end of the day. Basically, we were working 14-hour days, 12 to 14-hour days, and you know, luckily if you got 8 hours sleep, so it was just somewhere to rest your head and a little bit of quiet time, and so it wasn't a problem. It was.
You said you never worked so hard on a deployment. What were you doing those first few months?
We were trying to set up. I worked in the Joint Operations Centre as watchkeeper, duty officer, that type of thing. And so basically, we were trying to get the ops room set up correct, you know, with all the different types of communications we had at that time, in order to communicate directly with Ottawa. So that was a bit of a chore because, as I said, the buildings were still getting built, and all the infrastructure wasn't quite in there. So it was a challenge getting the secure comms and the computers and everything in there and working correctly. And again, we had no, in our JOC, in NCE, we had no radio communications with the battle groups. We were relied on the secure laptops. So it was always a bit of a chore and a fight to get information, because we needed to get that information to get back to Canada when there was any incidents as soon as and as quickly and as efficiently as possible. And because we couldn't listen to it on the combat net, we were able to rely on somebody in another ops room passing up information on a laptop, which was a chore because obviously they were fully engrossed in their TIC or their IED or whatever it was that was going on. So that was a bit of a fight. Again, the main job was to get information from Afghanistan to NDHQ as quickly and accurately as possible. If there was an incident, we made sure that there was comms locks down between the three different stations, including Capt, so nobody got on the phone and phoned home. One of our major priorities was to make sure that the powers that be in Ottawa knew of an incident before it was released in the newspaper. That was absolutely critical. We couldn't have the Canadian public waking up and finding that we'd lost a soldier or a couple of soldiers before the powers that be, you know, the Prime Minister, the Cabinet, NDHQ, before they knew. It was critical that we locked comms down, but we got the comms back to, that information back to Ottawa in a timely and accurate manner.
And how successful were you at doing that?
I think we were, I'm going to say 100% because you can never be 100%, but certainly high 90s. Because as soon as there was an incident, as soon as we got something, if it was a casualty, a single casualty or a mass casualty event, we went straight into lockdown mode, and we locked down Kabul, Camp Mirage and Capt. And basically once we told the signals dead in each area, they locked everything down, and it was that quick. You know, so I think it worked very, very well. And of course, once the incident was clear and everybody being notified, the G3 would give us the word, and then we would allow comms back up. And once everybody was notified, we opened comms up again. So that could take, you know, could take an hour or two, or it could take 5 or 6, depending on the number of casualties. And because it was all part of getting the families involved too. You know, we needed to do family notifications and everything else, so it was all tied in together, part of that comms lockdown. So
what's your day-to-day job once your NCE is set up, battle group hits the ground? What's your sort of
day-to-day job? Basically, just watching. I had the Stu 3. I had my two secure laptops. We had some big TV screens where that information was passed up, so when we typed it, everybody could read it. Nobody was looking over the shoulder. So it was basically just looking at the information coming through on the laptops, and then as soon as there was a tick or it was a contact and casualties reported, that's when we went into action and informed the G3. Did we got as much information as we could, and then we decided whether it was going to be a lockdown or whether it was just going to be an incident. If it was and we also got straight onto the secure landline, and got in touch with NDHQ and let them know verbally that we had an incident or possibly a major incident, and we were going into lockdown, and we'd keep them updated as quickly and as accurately as we could.
It is a pretty space age headquarters, digital headquarters.
It was, and it got progressively more complicated as the tour went on. And the one great thing about that tour, compared to some of the tours I did with the British Army, is the Canadians went to purchasing stuff off the shelf. They bypassed that total trials and procurement phase of equipment. So if they wanted anything, you know, and we decided there was an operational need, they went out and bought it. And so obviously we had lots of visits from NDHQ, from the staff there. They would bring some new technology and give us a quick, you know, 2-day, 1-day on-the-job training on some of this new equipment, and get us going. You know, at that time we're still using floppy disks, and we're trying to send stuff to Ottawa on a floppy disk, and you're using 15, 20 floppy disks to get, you know, a major incident or a set of battle group orders to Ottawa. It was very time consuming. As it went on, you know, we got thumb drives and stuff like that, which may sound funny now, but at that time that was a major, you know, it was a major step forward on our communications, and we could get stuff across there a lot quicker and a lot faster.
What was what's the learning curve like for you and others at the time?
My learning curve was huge. As I said to you earlier off camera, I'd never dealt with national headquarters, NDHQ. Minded I was being regiment to squadron to regimental headquarters or regimental headquarters to brigade headquarters. So when you're dealing with the National Defence Headquarters in the Prime Minister's office, it could be and was at times intimidating initially, till you got used to it. But the learning curve was high because you didn't want to mess up, you didn't want to screw it up, any information, because we're talking, you know, people's lives and in major incidents here. So it was critical that we got our stuff right. So it was key that we double checked and triple checked before we sent stuff back to Ottawa. But we still had to do it quickly. That was the difficult part, was trying to verify stuff and then get it back in a timely and accurate manner. So that was difficult.
Is there one day, one incident that stands out for you as maybe more memorable than other days?
I think the first thing that, and it may not have been the first fatality, but I think it was the first multiple fatality, was when we lost 3 guys in a G-Wagon IED explosion, and that was quite a shock, you know. Any death was a shock, but when you lose multiple casualties or you have multiple deaths in one day and in one incident, it was quite, it got to you, to be honest with you. I can't quite explain how, you know, the gut feeling, but it hurts. It hurts to lose anybody, but when you lose multiple guys and girls, it was a shock. And having said that, I think the worst one, really the worst one, is when we lost Capt Goddard. Obviously being the first female, and everybody knew who she was. That was, and unfortunately, that was right in the middle of the CanCon show, when we had the entertainers across from Canada, and that was right in the middle of that, and that caused a lot of problems because we only had 2 female captains on the tour, so we had to be really careful, and you know, about who, what, and where then, because you know, if we sent the wrong information, got out, you 50-50 chance of getting it wrong. So we had to make sure we got that one right. And just on a general day-to-day thing, we always paid respects to anybody that was getting repatriated. Doesn't matter what nation they came from, and the ramp ceremonies were always gut-wrenching. It doesn't matter, you know, who you were or what you were, and it didn't matter what time of the day it was. Everybody turned out. The civilians all turned out. And to be honest with you, I don't want to see another ramp ceremony as far as that, ever. I think I've seen over 40, and it's not fun. It's not fun at all. So that's probably the worst kind of thing, you know. So
can you? I don't know the answer. The ramp ceremonies themselves, is that something that was developed in 2006, or was?
I don't know. I honestly don't know. I don't know who devised them or who originated with them, but I mean, they are fantastic in their own right, you know, because you get respects from all your brothers and sisters in arms, and you get sent off in a very dignified and military manner, and it's always nice. The guys or the girls that you were fighting with may not have been able to get to the ramp ceremony. I think it was always a comfort to them knowing that there was somebody there to see them off out of theatre. You know, if you understand what I'm saying, that your buddy wasn't just getting arbitrarily put in the back of a plane and sent home without a care or a whim. There was, you know, dignity, respect, and a lot of concern and caring by all the nations. Every nation turned out that was in CAF. Even the civilians, the girls from the cookhouses and the mess halls and the guy that cut your hair, they all came. It doesn't matter whether it was 8 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the morning, 5 o'clock in the afternoon. Didn't matter. Everybody turned out, even if you'd been on shift for 12, 14 hours. and the ramp ceremony was 2 hours later. You got your ass out of bed, and you turned up with the Canadian contingent to see that person off, doesn't matter where they were from. But this is who originated them. I have no idea, to be honest with you.
How, this is your first staff job, but under trying circumstances. How satisfying was it for you?
I enjoyed it. I thought it was very satisfying. Personally, I'm going to say this, of course, I think I did a good job. I got, as you said, the learning curve was huge. A lot of the mundane stuff, you know, PowerPoint presentations, for example, never done them, that often, that well, and not that complicated, but simple stuff, some of the staff work. Again, as a senior NCO, you do a lot of staff work, but you don't necessarily do a lot of the staff work that you learn at RMC or you learn through your officer courses. So some of that was a challenge, but like everything else, you fight through it. You know, again, I had a great boss in Dick Cruikshank, who was my G3, who could go to any time and talk to, and he would help me out. And so it was difficult. It had its moments. I'd be lying if I said it didn't, you know, and I did struggle at times. But at the end of the day, I was quite happy with the job I did. I think Colonel Cruikshank, and now he's retired now, but I think they were happy with my work, and you know, I've not had any bad comments to my face, so I don't know. That always bodes well.
I'm curious about the Reg Reserve split relations within the NCE. Was there any distinction between the Regs and the Reserves? Like, how did they mesh for this? They
meshed, actually, and we all know this, and you know this, there was always a big thing between the MO or the Reserves and the regular army. But I think on that tour there was nearly a third or more throughout the whole battle group were reservists. The NCE was over 50% staffed by reservists. Obviously, some of the key ones like the G4, the MPs, the police side of it, they were all regulars. You know, we couldn't match their expertise, but a lot of the other cells were all filled by reservists. And as I could see from the battle update briefs that we did every morning, with all that G staff, the symmetry and the cooperation was fantastic. There was no headbutting per se, and no Reg Force guys looking down your nose at the perceived reservist. You know, it was very, very good, I thought, at our level. You know, I don't know what it's like in other organisations or other units, but certainly in the NCE, I thought everybody gelled well, and I think we all did a hell of a job under very trying circumstances.
Can you draw some comparisons, kind of then and now, your 6 tours of the British Army and now this one, Canadians? Anything that strikes you, the differences or the similarities between the two armies and how they do things?
A lot of the staff work was similar, as I could gather, but I think the Canadians were more, I've got to be careful how I say this, more regimented on the way they did their paperwork. With the British Army, it's a lot more, the paperwork was there and the formats were there, but the Brits weren't as strict. You know, as long as the information with the Brits went, that was pretty much good to go, right? But with the Canadians, if it wasn't done the right way, people used to get, you know, upset and a few temper tantrums from because it wasn't quite in the right format or wasn't in the, you know, the right version of whatever it was. So, but you know, pressure-wise, time-wise, constraints, all pretty much the same. But as I say, the Canadians are a little bit different, slightly more funny on how they wanted their staff work doing and how they wanted it completed.
What about just the way that Canadians fought a battle?
I think the Canadians went there as peacekeepers. I think that was a reputation we had and I say we because I'm proud to serve with the Canadian military. as I was with the British military. But I think the Canadians have a reputation of being peacekeepers, and a lot of the junior NCOs and senior NCOs had never done anything, and officers hadn't done anything other than peacekeeping tours. And so when they hit the ground in a full-on war situation, I think their learning curve was obviously fantastic. You know, it went right through the roof. But I think they adapted and overcame, and they did one hell of a job. And I still talk to a lot of Brits now, and in my prior job training the Brits to go to Afghanistan, there was nothing but praise for the Canadian battalions and regiments that went out there and the stuff they did on their tours. So it enhanced the Canadian reputation 100%. They did a fantastic job out there, which was great. Which is good to hear. And again, that was back in, you know, we all have our ups and downs with politicians, but at that time, the government that we had, they got us the right kit at the right time. As I said earlier, they bypassed the procurement headache that we used to have in all militaries. It doesn't matter whether you're Canadian or British, that part is a bugbear. But for example, very early on, we knew that the G-Wagon wasn't going to sustain the IED hits that we were taking. They were just getting bigger and bigger. So within months, less than 2 months, I think we got the RG-31s from South Africa. We got them straight into theatre. They didn't even go to Canada. They came straight to theatre, and the instructors came straight from Gagetown into theatre and trained the drivers in theatre. So I mean, stuff like that, you can't ask for better. The M777s, you know, the artillery pieces, again, off the shelf for specific missions, again, worked fantastic out there. So it was good. It was no problem at all. I thought it was really, if we wanted it and there was an operational need, the guys on the ground got it. So that was really good, which couldn't be said for my time in the British Army, again, because everything then just came through the normal procurement system, and by the time your tour was over, it still was going through the Ministry of Defence or D&D, whatever it was, you know, to get that stuff. You may get it on your 5th tour after, but not the one that you really needed it for. So it was good.
After such a grueling campaign season, what kind of state are you and everybody else in the NCE in when it's the end of your tour?
Actually, some of us left. I went in early, so I got out at the end of July, early August. Some of the guys stayed a little bit longer and rotated into the NATO mission, whereas we were under the American mission. So that's why we got, this is the two different, there's the Campaign Star and the SWASM. So some of the guys got both because they worked on both. So some guys did volunteer and stayed on. Most of the guys, obviously the reservists, were kind of time limited constraints with work and etc. So, you know, time came, time to leave. You hope there was somebody coming in to take your place. If not, the guys just had to buckle up and man an extra shift here and there, or get somebody in from another department to help out at the quieter times. And then when the heat was on, another guy stepped up to the plate from that specific organisation that could look after it better.
I guess, how tired are you?
Tired, beat. I was beat. As I said earlier on, by the time the main task force arrived, I said to Colonel Putt, I said, sir, I've never worked so hard in I need to go home. I said, you know, kind of joking. I said, I'm beat. I said, I've never worked so hard in my life. Put so many hours in. Not physical work, but you know, you're constantly on the phone, or you're on. It's just the demands of the job and dealing with NDHQ, and that type of thing. So I was quite lucky. Colonel Putt, being the man he is, he turned around and says, "Well, we have to go to Kabul." It was kind of a nice thing of him. We were going to Kabul, and he says, "Why don't you come up to Kabul?" He says, "The Gurkhas are in Kabul." He says, "I know you like a curry." He says, in a can of Guinness, they have a 2-can rule, whereas Capt was dry. He says, "We're going up to Kabul for the opening of the embassy." He says, I'll get you out of here for a couple of days. You can come up as my aide type of thing." So I did. I got up to Kabul for 3 or 4 days. Mini R&R in theatre type thing, 3 days. You know, chance to talk to some other Brits, curry, couple of cans of Guinness, and just got out of that environment for a couple of 3 days, flew back, right as rain, ready to go again. So that was pretty cool. It was good of him to do that for me.
Did you get HLTA on this?
Yes, I did, sir.
Yeah? What'd you do for that?
As I said earlier on, it was my 25th win anniversary. So I met the wife. She flew out to Athens. I flew into Athens, and then we did a mini Greek tour where we went to Athens for a couple of days, Crete, Rhodes, Santorini, and then back to Athens. So it was a good gig. That was good, and that was right in the middle. So it was a good time to have it. It was good for the wife, good for me, good for everybody, and it worked well.
What's it like though when your 21 days are up and you have to go back to Afghanistan? What kind of...
Well, I mean, it doesn't matter where you are. When you're on vacation, you never want to go back to work, doesn't matter what job you're in, right? But obviously going back, you're going back, and you're still keeping up to date on what's been going on. You still get, it doesn't matter whether you're in Greece or what other country, you still get reports, you still get reports of what's going on in theatre. But you just got to man up, you've got to go back, because there's somebody else waiting to come out. For everyone that's on, there's other people waiting to go on HLTA. So, it's never good to go back, but hey, you go back and you carry on and just do the best you can.
How did you come back to Canada?
I came back. I didn't decompress. The decompression centre in Cyprus wasn't set up at that time. So basically, they got me into Dubai, and I flew Lufthansa from Dubai to Toronto, and then Toronto to Edmonton. And I was picked up by representatives from the regiment, met me at the airport, took me back to Edmonton Garrison, where my vehicle was in storage, etc. Cleared out, and then got my vehicle, and after 2 days I went home. It was surreal. That whole 3 or 4 days was, you went from high pressure, high activity, down to, oh yeah, just sign it, you're done, and get your car. Thanks for coming out. And it's just a bit of a shock the way it all eventually happened. So,
I mean, it wasn't your first rodeo, obviously. Was it a different transition though from your previous tours?
Yeah, because the British tour, I was gone as part of a squadron or a company. So we all deployed in together, and we all deployed out together. Whether you were the main body or advanced party or rear party, you were still with the group. This time, when I went in, I was the first guy in from the NCE to go in, and when I came out, I think I was the first guy out of the NCE. So I basically was a one-man show. So there was nobody, mutual support in that. There was none there. There was just me, and when I could get a phone, I talked to the wife. But there was nobody. So sometimes you were at a loose end because you weren't quite sure what was happening. Some of the staff in the who were clearing us out, again, it was new to them, so they weren't quite sure. So it had its ups and downs, but everybody, battled through, and we did it, and we got out okay. So,
when did you fully retire from the?
I retired 2 years later, in end of, I'm going to say September or October of 2008. I think I was actually retired.
So, depending on people's jobs, they've told me in some of these interviews, right? If you have a concern about landmines coming back from Croatia, you can't walk on the grass. Was there, after being in the NCE, is there anything that you, like, in terms of your dreams or anything else that you dealt with?
Obviously I wasn't up fighting, at the front line with the boys, but there's things like, I don't know if there's a quite a good American movie called Returning Private Chase or something like that. It's about US Marines that repatriate a body. I watched 20 minutes of that and couldn't watch it anymore. I go watch Lone Survivor or something, and I just sit there and the field is empty, and I just sit there for another 20 minutes, get my shit together, to be honest with you, without being crude, and then and then go. So I don't get flashbacks, PTSD, but I get emotional with some of when I watch certain events, if I could say that, like ramp ceremonies. I don't want to watch another ramp ceremony. You know, some movies when you, and I know it's a movie, but it's still based on reality, and it still gets at you. You know, those people have been there. They understand some of the emotions that those characters are going through, and that affects me. You know, but not. I don't worry about walking on the grass, because I didn't have to worry about walking on the grass. You know, but this is triggers. Emotional triggers, and say ramp ceremonies or anything to do with repatriation and that type of thing. I couldn't watch them. Even when I got home, you know, there was a fantastic thing. Like when we take the bodies down the Highway of Heroes, I can't watch. I just does me in. I just can't watch that. So,
how close are you to this core of members of the South Alberta Light Horse that went over and did this?
Not really, not a lot, because most of the people that I went with were all Edmonton or Northern Alberta, and I think there was only me from Southern Alberta on that tour. So I'm done in by distance, if you want to speak. You know, I went to a couple of dinners that the Honorary Colonel put on to thank us for our service and that type of thing. But I don't generally go up. That's just too. It's not that I don't like the guys. I love the guys to death. But it's just time. If I go to Edmonton, it's a full weekend, and I can't find that time.
So when you look back at this, I mean, this is 10 years ago now. Yeah. How to sort of summarize its impact on you? How do you think it affected or changed you as a person, as a soldier?
I learned a lot as a person, as an individual person. I learned a lot. I seem to calm down a lot. I used to get agitated quite quickly, but doing that job, you couldn't. You had to learn to calm down, get a grip. You know, if you yourself-hand your emotions, and get the job, you know, and get stuff sorted correctly and quickly. So that helped. It calmed, you know, theoretically it calmed me down a little bit. I have a lot more patience now with people, you know, than I did before. But on the whole, it was a good experience. Don't really talk about it much, because, you know, it wasn't really one of those glory jobs that you talk about, you know. But I admit, I tell people I did a job I was asked to do. I think I did it well. I enjoyed it. Would I do it again? Probably, you know. But all in all, it was one of those life experiences that I have no regrets in doing. And I'd probably do it again.
Is there anything about it that I haven't asked you that you want to say?
The only thing, you know, and this might sound bitter and twisted, and it's one of the reasons I left the reserves, is I lost a lot of money in one sense, because they messed up on the Class C, and they would have changed now. So I never got my pay in theatre. I got it when I came back, but obviously it was earned in a non-tax year that I wasn't in theatre, where I was entitled to the tax-free element. So I got my normal pay plus the military that they owed me, and I lost a whole whack of money because of somebody's incompetence somewhere along the line, and we fought it from day one in theatre till 2 years after, and I've still got no resolve. And that's the only thing that leaves me a little bitter and twisted, but I've moved on.
Like they screwed up all the reserve pay, or how?
I know for a fact there was another 4 or 5 guys that went through the same thing. They somehow or some way they didn't get us from the Class BA to Class C properly, and it fell through the cracks and it didn't go around. By the time we got it all sorted, we were in a different tax year. Yeah. And the answer we got back was, you can only get your tax-free benefits in the year that you earn them. So we got, you can imagine, I was in the oil patch, I was on pretty good money, so I got, you know, quite high tax bracket, and then you got this quite large back pay, which was taxed quite heavily again. So, and that's the only thing that, and I had, don't get me wrong, I had a lot of heavy hitters in 41 Brigade went to bat for me, and they couldn't resolve it either. From the brigade commander to the ARC down, they were all fighting for me, but, and the others. But it, so, and I'm pleased to say that that has been resolved. I guess it's a new system, or a new way of getting reserves from Class A or BA, wherever they're on, onto Class C or full-time employment, and then people are not going through that now. So again, if somebody benefits from it, that's cool. You know, just at that time it was slightly annoying.
So just so I can be clear, you were getting paid Class B instead of Class C where you're overseas, and the difference is what you got as the lump sum.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was quite a lot. But that's all right. I'm past it now. I've moved on. Life is good.
Thanks very much for your time.
Yeah, no problem. Welcome.